Whenever it comes to third party code and the script tag, I tend to be a bit paranoid. Many third party libraries aren't really made for single page apps. They usually expect every page to act like a first hit, where everything is fresh with nothing in memory. Usually, extra steps are necessary to make things work properly. Let's see what we can break. Just a heads up, this video is a little bit advanced. We'll be exploring how to load scripts using Nuxt and some problems you'll face because it's a single page app. If this sounds like too much right now, that's okay. You can always come back to this video later. Since we're looking for bugs, let's open up our DevTools with the Console tab open. Start by refreshing the page. So far, so good. Click the home link in our header. Now click another property. Uh-oh, what's all this about? Let's take a look at our DOM. Go to the Elements tab and use Find. That's Command F on your Mac or Control F in Windows. This will bring up the Find bar. We want to see if our Google script is in our page more than once. Search for libraries. Okay, it's in there only once. That means Nuxt is rendering it right, so what's the deal? This brings us to an interesting problem with third party scripts. Yes, Nuxt is adding the script tag and removing it as needed. But since it's adding and removing a script tag, the code in that URL is ran each time it does it. In our case, Google Maps runs more JavaScript and adds even more scripts to the page. You can see those above. And since Nuxt is a single page app, everything stays in the browser's memory. Google knows its code was already included before, so it throws an error. We need a way to ensure that this script tag is ran only once for the lifetime of the visitor's session. Oh, that's right. Google Maps had a callback in their documentation. We should be able to use that to set some type of variable that we can check to render or not render the Google Maps script tag. Let's go back to our code. Go to the end of source and add and callback equals initmap. Since this script is ran in the global scope and not in view land, we'll need to define initmap off the window object. So let's try this. Just above our export, create a function called window.initmap. Inside that, let's just console log test. And save. Refresh your browser. Alright, what happened? Remember that I said the server environment would explode if we referenced window or document objects on the created hook. Well, here you go. Since we're using server-side rendering and refreshed the whole page, it was rendering on the server. The server is Node. It has no idea what the window is. This is only defined client-side in the browser. What we need is a way to know if this code is being executed on the server or on the client. Once again, Nuxt delivers. It has the process object. The process object exposes properties that describe the environment that Nuxt is running in. We're interested in process.client. As you might expect, it's true when Nuxt is running in the browser, and false when it's running on the server. Let's update our function definition to check for process.client before trying to define it. Remember how we saw Nuxt do two builds, one for the server and one for the client? When it builds this page, it will replace process.client with true or false when it writes this file to the disk. Let's save this and try again. Okay, no more explosion, but now it's saying the function doesn't exist. How can that be? The problem is this code is inside our view single file component. That means on first page view, the code we just wrote will only run after Nuxt starts up. Since our Google code is in the head of the document, it will run before Nuxt even starts, so this function isn't defined yet. So let's move this function to the head object. Erase process.client and everything inside of it. Under our map object, create another object with an array. This object will add another script tag, but this time, we don't want to pass it a source attribute like we did with the Google Maps. We want to add content to the element. Can you think of what we'd need? We can use the inner HTML property. Whatever value we give it will be injected inside our script tags when they're rendered. Let's give it a value of console log test. Add an HID with the value of map init. Let's save and refresh our browser. Okay, we're still seeing the init map error. That's fine, but what's this unexpected token business? Let's look for test in the Elements tab. What? What did Nuxt do with my single quotes? Well, by default, Nuxt has your back. Whenever it sees any special characters and meta tags, it's going to encode those to help prevent security problems. There is a way to disable this feature for a tag. It's rightly named Dangerously Disable Sanitizers by Tag ID. That's really long. As the name mentions, it's very dangerous and not recommended. But hey, I'm not here to judge. Let's try it out anyway. Under your script array, add a new property called Dangerously Disable Sanitizers by Tag ID with the value of an empty object. Within the object, each property will be the HID you want to work with. So type in our map init. The value is an array of properties you'd like to disable security on. In our case, it's inner HTML. Save and refresh. Great, it's being ran. Now let's update our inner HTML to our init map function so Google can hit it. Now we need a way to be able to know inside our View app when this external library is ready. Since Google Maps runs outside of View, we need to create our own variable outside of View using the window object. Inside your function, enter window.maploaded equals true. Save and refresh. Go to your console and type window.maploaded. Nice, it's true. That means Google ran our callback. At this point, you may be wondering why I keep telling you to refresh. After all, Nuxt is supposed to automatically keep your browser in sync with your code. The reason is, I want to make sure that we're mimicking the very first hit into our app and totally reset the environment just like a real user would. I do this often when testing first page hit problems, or third party libraries like Google Maps. Alright, so thanks to our map loaded variable, we have a way to know when Google Maps is loaded. Now we just have to find a way to tell Nuxt to render or not render Google Maps script tag to solve our original problem. For this, we'll add a property to our Google Maps script tag called skip. It's literally made for telling Nuxt when to skip rendering a tag. When it's set to true, the script tag will not render. When it's set to false, it will render. You aren't limited to just true or false either. You can also use a function or an expression that returns true or false. Add a property called skip right after the first property. Set the value to window.maploaded. Remember, this is ran on server side too, so add process.client in front of it so things don't explode again. So when we are in the client environment, the map will be loaded. We'll skip adding this tag on a page change. Save, and you guessed it, refresh. This time, let's go back and forth between the home page and our property pages to make sure the Google error doesn't show up. Looks great. Now that we no longer have a special characters in our inner HTML, we can safely remove dangerously disable sanitizers by tag ID. Wow, We covered a lot of features there, didn't we? If there's one thing I want you to take away from this lesson, is that with Nuxt, any third party library you load will stay in memory inside the browser, so you have to be careful. Next up is one of my favorite tests, network latency.